Hello, Astro Darlings, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. Today is Sunday, August 31st, in the year 2025, and it is the final day and the final Sunday in the month of August. And I am Deb McBride, and I am recording this in very beautiful Escazú, Costa Rica, on my patio. And the first thing, there's so much to talk about this week ahead, but I'm going to handle tomorrow first because it's most immediate. 4:07 a.m. Eastern Time, Saturn enters Pisces. So this is a thing for us because, as you may recall, if you have been listening to me this year, and if you haven't, well, then we're going to explain. Saturn went into the sign of Aries earlier this year. And this is profound because it means it is starting a brand new path in the new zodiac. Okay, and its friend Neptune is doing the same thing. So Neptune went in a little sooner and is a slower planet and traveled into the sign of Aries, and then Saturn met it there in Aries. And then what we've got is both of those planets together in the sign of Aries, except they are both going to move backwards through their retrograde and enter Pisces once more. Tomorrow, Saturn is going to do this, 4:07 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 2:07 my time. And so this experience of Saturn going back into Pisces is a very deep, profound moment because it is asking us to step back, look at the lessons that we have learned from the last 2.5 years when Saturn went into Pisces in March of 2023, and how it's been affecting us. Where is it in our natal chart? What's it doing for us? What have we experienced? What we have learned? And so Saturn entering Pisces is asking us to review where we've been, but also it's ending a huge cycle because it is at the very end of the zodiac. And it's going to go back into Aries, but not till early next year. So we're waiting and working with this because it is a profound moment to work through the end of something. And so both Saturn and Neptune, and Uranus too, but we're not there yet, they are asking us to wrap up a part of our lives where we've been the last 29 years. And something new is coming for everyone. Now, when endings occur, especially in collective planets, because, the moon does this all the time. It hits 29 degrees of a sign, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It does this every few days, and it leaves and goes into something else. It's not as profound as when a planet like Saturn, that takes 2.5 years to get here, goes into a new sign. And it's not as profound as Saturn, which takes 29 years to go around the zodiac, enters a new zodiac going into Aries. So Neptune is its buddy right now because they're hanging out at the same place, and Neptune will do the same thing. And this is more important for Neptune because it's a longer cycle, and it's been 165 years that it's been coming to this degree of the zodiac, the end, to step over into Aries to go back into Pisces. Neptune's been doing this for a longer time, since last July in 2024. Very profound. So this is a huge backup. This is a huge step backwards and asking us to review where we've been and close a door in the last 29 years. And so where have you been? What have you been doing? What themes are present for you right now that have been leaving your life, or where are you closing off something that has gone on for nearly 30 years? So this is vital. What I want to say a little bit about the moon goes through each sign in 2.5 days. And so when the moon does this, we have a time period before it ends the next sign. And I talked about this last week. It's the void moon. When the moon is what we call void of course. So it's off course. It's not on course because it's no longer talking to any more planets before it enters the next sign. So the other day, Wednesday, we had a super long void moon that started on Tuesday evening in my region of the world, and then went all the way through until I guess it was 11:30 Wednesday night when it entered the following sign. That whole section of time is what we call the void, and I spoke in great detail about it last week. However, the void is very, very long when we have planets at the early part of a new sign. So that means there's a whole section of a sign that the moon is passing through and it's not touching the other planets. And so when it gets into the new sign, then it starts making aspects to planets. When something like Saturn goes back into a sign and hits 29 degrees and is going to retrograde back through 28, etc., 27, that means the voids are not going to be so long. That means that the voids are going to be short, a few minutes, a half an hour, an hour. It's not going to be a very long void moon because there are planets that it's waiting to aspect at the very end of the sign. So many of these voids have been long for a few months now. We're watching very long void moons and sections of time that belong to this in-between liminal space, which I talked about last week in great detail. So now that Saturn is moving back, Saturn is going to give us a shorter void period because when the moon is in a sign like perhaps another water sign like Cancer, or it's in Virgo and in opposition, it's going to make an aspect to Saturn at the very end of Pisces and the very end of the zodiac. So these long voids are going away for a while because then eventually Neptune is going to move back into the end of Pisces, and then Uranus is going to move back into the end of Taurus. So we're going to start like seeing less and less big chunks of time, day and a half of void. Okay, we're going to stop seeing that, and then we're going to start seeing shorter periods. And then when everything goes into its new sign early next year, then these long void periods will be back again at certain times of the month. And so Saturn is moving back, and it's asking us to reflect and revisit things that are ending and things that are completing in our lives. What are you trying to create next? It's like the last stages of the old before we step into the new. And most of my listeners are over 30 years old and have had this Saturn return. And so Saturn has been around their zodiac in their chart once. And so they may recall, except if they were very little, maybe not, they may recall where they've been, where they were 29 years ago when Saturn did this. And if you're under 30 years old, well, then you are experiencing something brand new. And hey, congratulations. That's going to be really cool. And, you know, this is something that is a marker in time. And oftentimes big events happen in the world. But we're not worrying about that right now. We're just getting into the past of Saturn in Pisces at the end of the zodiac, and we also have to contend with the feeling in our body, the unconscious, subconscious feelings of dealing with something that's ending, something profound ending, and where our fears may lie in this, the subconscious stuff that we didn't even know was going on for us, that we might be afraid of, that we are just finding out now. And so, you know, there's a fear about losing something, letting go of something. And certainly the end of the zodiac asks us to let go and trust that the divine will be there for us and will escort us through this transition successfully, and we're going to be fine. So this is a big moment. Saturn at the end of the zodiac. My teacher used to say, and I've said this 1,000 times on this podcast, he said, this is the Christian myth. This is Christ on the cross. This is that biblical story of, you know, the end of the Redeemer in some ways. But it is a new day, and there's a rebirth afterwards when Saturn crosses over into Aries, and there is that moment of redemption, and then the new day comes. And so let go of what no longer serves you in this time. Connect with what is no longer serving you and where you'd like to change up your life. Very important, and it's really good to work on this. Saturn is a planet of work. So it's a really good thing to work on the experience of letting go, because we're all so bad at that. Because we're clinging to this material world, which Saturn is a great part of. And we are working to release the old and embrace the new so that we can continue a brand new path and a new life. Okay, so that's one part of what's going on. The other thing is that Uranus is going to go retrograde on Friday the 5th, and that is in my time zone, but really in the Eastern time zone, it's 12:51 a.m. Saturday morning, the 6th. For me, it's actually 10:51 p.m. the night before. So we are really entering the time when everything is getting ready to go backwards, to go back into its old sign. So I just mentioned that Uranus is going to go back into Taurus, and it's not going to do it right now because Uranus is in Gemini for right now, and eventually it'll go back into Taurus, but we've got some time before that happens. So we are experiencing the retrograde station of Uranus, which is really happening as I speak. So we're getting revved up for that stationary retrograde of Uranus, which is, happens once a year. And Uranus is a topsy-turvy kind of planet, and it gives us reason to cross our T's and dot our I's and get our feet flat on the ground so that we know we're not going to be taken with this big wind of tornado of Uranus, because Uranus, when its station's going direct or going retrograde, is always a big deal. So if things are crazy, and things are upside down, then just say, oh yeah, that's the station of Uranus. Now, interestingly enough, with Uranus going retrograde in the early part of Gemini, we are then having the eclipse a couple days later. So last week I spoke quite a bit about the eclipse. The eclipse is Sunday the 7th, the next time we meet on this podcast. And it is a lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. And I met with the Internations group this morning, and I did a lecture about the two eclipses that are coming. So we're still a week away from the eclipse, but the fact is that Uranus is going to station retrograde as we are getting ready to have the eclipse. And the eclipses, we're already feeling them. We already feel the eclipses. They are not really one of those things that you feel on top of the day. You can, but things are going to happen for you now that are eclipse related, okay? And so Sunday the 7th is the lunar eclipse. It occurs at 15 degrees Pisces, and that's a special degree. It's at 2:09 p.m. in the afternoon on Sunday, that's Eastern time. And why is 15 degrees Pisces a special degree? Because 15 degrees Pisces then makes a semi-square to about 0 degrees fixed, because it is mutable. And so, what do we have very close to 0 degrees fixed? Oh, that would be Pluto. So, we have Pluto appearing at the early degrees of Aquarius. And so with Pluto in early Aquarius, the way it is, it's 1 degree right now. Okay, on the eclipse, it's going to be 1 degree 39 minutes. And so that's very, very close to the semi-square of the eclipse. Wowie. So this is going to be something really intense. This isn't just a total eclipse in Pisces. This is something where Pluto is involved. Uranus is involved because it's stationing retrograde at the same time that we're going to get ready for this eclipse. And it indicates that 2 outer planets are involved in this eclipse. Okay, so now we've got Uranus and Pluto involved in the eclipse. Now there's a very nice relationship to Jupiter during this eclipse, because Jupiter will be at a very lovely degree of Cancer. It'll be at 19 degrees of Cancer, which is a trine, a little bit wide, but a trine to the eclipse in Pisces at the North Node. So this is an eclipse about fulfillment, about going in the direction of fulfillment and having faith in the direction of your fulfillment, instead of being worried and fretting and chewing your fingernails at the South Node portion of the eclipse where the sun is, which is the dynamic for this. Okay, so that's South Node in Virgo. I need to control this. I need to grab this. I need to do the math. I need to handle the details. And what am I going to do? But I have to take the risk and trust in something greater than myself. It's about our faith. It's about our beliefs. It's about our experience of something that is not tangible. That's the North Node in Pisces with an eclipse. And so you may get tossed around by Uranus going retrograde, by Pluto being part of the eclipse. And this is a profound, deep, transformative feeling during this eclipse. So the thing you want to do is have some rituals set up for this. Set your intentions. Set your intentions. I know it's a full moon. It's usually where we release something, but this is at the North Node, this eclipse. So I would say set some intentions that are related to what's next in your life. What do you want to open the door to in your life? Where do you maybe need to trust and take a little bit of a risk and a leap? And so some really good experiences of eclipses come when we have something in place that guides us through, whether you are doing something very ritual related, like a space cleanse and like maybe a little prayer or a little breath work or some meditations, or you have your your lists of things you want to manifest during a North Node eclipse, what direction you'd like to go in, and observe. Observe how you're feeling, because Pluto is in a semi-square. And in traditional Western astrology, that's considered a minor aspect, but astrologers know better than to say, this is a minor aspect, this is minor. It's not minor. It is, and I've studied other methods of astrology like cosmobiology, Uranian astrology, symmetrical astrology, they call it now. And these are important aspects because what they do is they bring subtle energies to the fore that, like we're slapped upside the head by some transformational effect. And like, what is this? How did this? Oh, it must be the eclipse. Yeah, it's the eclipse, but it's the eclipse with Pluto and the station of Uranus. And so we need to work with our feelings during this and not ignore them. It can be really easy to ignore whatever this does. It may make you feel uncomfortable for some reason. It's easier to suppress your feelings at this time. But they are challenging aspects. This is the moon is going to be making the semi-square, and the sun will be making the sesquisquare or sesquiquadrate. And they are similar to squares, those aspects, semi-square and sesquisquare, sesquiquadrate. And they are sensitive, undercurrent, smoldering conflicts that sometimes we just want to wipe clean with a sponge and sweep under the carpet. And that's not how these work. That means that there is something sensitive going on under the surface that requires our attention. Okay? It requires a certain amount of our dealing with the feelings that are coming up as a result. Use these energies to learn something, to learn about yourself, about what is coming up out of the subconscious. Pisces is a very subconscious sign. It's where we go to sleep. It's what's surfacing during those hours. So with Pluto engaged in this, we could learn a whole lot that's going to improve our lives and transform our lives. Now, everybody wants change, but no one wants to do the work for it, okay? And it's hard to do the work for it. If change, really productive change in our lives, a new job, a new relationship, a new home, a brand new career, whatever you are looking at during this time, look at the beliefs that you have around it, because Pisces is about beliefs. I believe that I have to work really hard to, achieve something in my career. I believe life's hard. I believe I'll never find my partner. These are all beliefs that they are just that, beliefs. No one says they're true except you, because you accept them to be true. So Pisces is about beliefs and things that are in our subconscious that we don't even know we believe. So if something surfaces subtly because of the nature of Pluto, or maybe not so subtly because of the swinging direction of Uranus, then I would say you want to pay attention to this. Like, wow, this is why I've not been in a relationship in all these years, because I think blah, blah, blah. And what is that? That's coming up out of your subconscious. Do something about it. You know, I always say this, I've said it before on this podcast, and I was thinking it a lot this week. We can't just live. We can't just live. We have to do the work. We can't just expect things are going to change, because we are all headed for some predictable future. And if you want the predictable future, that's fine. But if you are not in line with a predictable future, like you get your parents' future, what they had, maybe you don't want what they had. Maybe you want something completely different. And therefore, you've got to do the work to go get it and be passionate about going and getting it. And that involves looking at your subconscious beliefs and how to clear them and get them out of the way so that they don't keep you from achieving what you really want in your life. So this is, I'm always going to tell you to do the work, right? And now Saturn's going back into Pisces. It's like, well, yeah, where's the work in the subconscious belief realm, okay? So this is a big week. We've got so much going on between the outer planets and between Saturn changing direction, and then there's this eclipse. And then there's our everyday friends. So there's Mercury, who is entering his own sign of Virgo on Tuesday the 2nd, and it's at 9:23 a.m. Eastern Time. So Mercury's getting out of Leo, where he's been maybe a little frisky and fiery, and now he is going into Virgo, where he really loves to be. So this is supportive of the eclipse, because he'll be with the sun or close to the sun. Mercury's going to fly through Virgo. Because he's going in Tuesday morning Eastern Time, and then by Sunday it'll be at 10 degrees. So it'll have already moved 1/3 of the way through Virgo in less than a week. So Mercury's moving quickly through its own sign, and often it does that. But there's another point that I would like to bring up about this eclipse. Venus. So I'm looking at the eclipse chart as I speak, and Venus is going to be at 15 degrees of Leo. And that is in conjunct to the eclipse point, the moon at 15 degrees of Pisces. And then there's Mars. That's going to be at 20 degrees of Libra on the eclipse day, which is a wide sextile to Venus, but also a wide inconjunct to the moon in the eclipse. But this is an eclipse, and everything is heightened, right? And so Venus and Mars, talking to each other very nicely in a sextile, are going to be making inconjuncts to the eclipse at 15 Pisces, and that means it's a yod. So that is what we call the finger of God. I talked about it a few months ago when we had a different scenario with the yod. But the fact that this is an eclipse and they are both really close to the node, they're making a yod configuration with the node and then also with the moon, this is a big deal. So now we've got Venus and Mars involved in the eclipse, and Pluto, and Uranus on its own wild card adventure of turning around. But this is something unusual. This is a lot of aspects talking to the eclipse and really giving us a richer experience of it. Now, what are Venus and Mars? Well, they're the relationship planets, right? Their passion, their love, their creativity, their motivation and ambition. So there may be some relationship stuff going on at the time of the eclipse as well. So now when I'm looking at this, I've got Jupiter making a nice trine to the eclipse, thank God, and sextiling the sun. Good. Okay, good. Thank you, Jupiter. Mercury involved, sort of opposition, but conjunct the sun. Pluto in a semi-square, and Venus and Mars in a yod. So this is a deep, rich, juicy eclipse in Pisces, in watery Pisces. You may have feelings, you may have emotions, you may feel the cascade of emotions, the tides, and you may have some things surface that reveal things about yourself that is relative to your relationships, and not just personal, intimate, how you relate to other people. That's Venus. And opposition, sun and moon in opposition because it's a lunar eclipse, that experience of being in opposition is you and me, I and you across the table from me, right? So that's the dynamics of relationships as well. So this is powerful. And I recommend just giving yourself that space. Don't plan a lot of things. And you know what I always say, don't start something new between two eclipses, because the eclipse corridor starts on the 7th with this eclipse, the lunar eclipse, and then it completes on the 21st with the second eclipse, which is a solar eclipse at the very, very end of Virgo, 29 degrees Virgo. More on that as we get there. We should already start feeling events in our life in these days, but I would recommend try to keep some space around these days so that you can just sort of relax if you need to, and things are not high strung. Now, sure, you could get busy. If you have your own business, all of a sudden clients come out of the woodwork. They need you right away, so you're going to respond to it. Sometimes eclipses do that. It may not be some big hullabaloo of, arguments in your family or something, but it might be just that you're really busy. And I've had that happen through eclipses with me too, where I've had to, manage my time properly because it was just getting really intense during the eclipse. Okay. So that's something else. In the meantime, Mars is going to square Jupiter on Thursday the 4th. And this doesn't happen very often, but Mars is in Libra, that he's not crazy about. He's not terribly comfortable in, because he likes to be in the opposite sign of Aries. And Mars in Libra wants to find balance. And Mars is hot and hot-headed. So its experience of peace and serenity is not usually a great one. So Jupiter arrives, the two of them square each other. That's a bit of a challenge. And Jupiter's in Cancer, which definitely wants happiness in the family and peace and joy and love. And Mars comes in and kind of tramples on that a little bit. So if there's some unrest for you with Mars and Jupiter, again, remember, look at it. What is Mars in Libra? Mars in Libra is about, finding peace and serenity among the war or the chaos, or watching your temper and not allowing it to speak ahead of what you're really feeling. You might be feeling really polite and 1 minute, and then you want to tear someone's head off verbally the next. So this is the nature of Mars in Libra. Mars is not balanced and isn't terribly balanced when it can't express itself properly. It knows it has to be polite. It has to keep its emotions in check, its anger in check. Jupiter may come along and expand on that and show us, oh, that's where I get triggered. I don't want to get triggered, so I'm going to mind my P's and Q's during this time and try not to let my temper speak for me. And temper can be really big between Mars and Jupiter, or Jupiter could expand your awareness of what triggers you and therefore give you some insight. And that's what we really want, is we want insight from Jupiter, which is an insightful planet, and get some handle on how we cannot allow our temper to speak for us, okay? Mars needs to behave when it's in Libra. Maybe you're finding yourself needing to behave in situations that you find intolerable, and you just want to open your mouth and just let it all out. That's often Jupiter. Jupiter can also be open mouth, insert foot. And with Mars making a challenge, it could really give us a moment of losing it, okay? So don't lose your temper. Try to curb all of this. There's a lot happening in the sky right now. This week ahead is chock full of stuff, okay? It isn't just an eclipse. We got Uranus changing. We got Saturn going backwards. We got Mars and Jupiter getting high strung. We've got Pluto involved in the eclipse with Venus and Mars. It's a lot of information, and you're going to sit here spinning, listening to my podcast saying, oh my God, what was that? What was that? Did she say what? And so, the best thing is call me for a session, get in touch, go to thegoldenastrologer.com and connect with me for a session. But also bring your awareness to this week. Bring your self-awareness to this week. And just know, listen to how happy the birds are right now. Aren't they sweet? They're telling us to be self-aware, okay? I have to have awareness of the birds. I'm like living in Costa Rica, right? I've got to like give them a moment to speak here and be aware, because we know that being raising our awareness is going to help us meet these challenges and know and catch ourselves behavior wise before we go into some unconscious old pattern. And we want to not have a predictable temper tantrum outcome, okay? And there's a lot that's high strung, and eclipses are always high strung. So what you want to do is really take a breath, step back, say, do I really need to get this upset about something? Do I really need to lose my temper? Do I really need to yell at somebody? Do I really need to write that nasty email? Can I go catch my breath and walk around the park a bit, or walk around the house if you have to, and just take some breaths and make a nice cup of peppermint tea and just relax with your energy and see it as it gets stirred up, and say, I don't need to express this as such. Unless you're really happy and excited about something and you want to spread joy, well, that's different. Do you want to be exuberant and excited? And don't plow over someone with your joy. but share the joy, share the wealth of joy, So it could be that you get excited. Maybe there's a big breakthrough. And that's another thing that we should aim for during this eclipse. Just the aiming for the breakthrough, the Uranus station, the Pluto connection, Mars and Jupiter. So if it's time to jump for joy, fantastic. That's great. That doesn't mean, just because what I'm showing you is intense, it doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. It could be like exuberation. You could be really busy. Your business takes off. And it's like unexpected. Great. So then use the energy wisely. Don't overextend yourself. That's the other thing. Like when we have this much, we think, especially Mars and Jupiter, we think we're capable of things and we push ourselves, and then we strain a muscle or something, and it's like, no, I shouldn't have done that. That Mars Jupiter can also be strains and sprains and stuff. So let's just be really wise, self-aware, and grounded during these aspects that we've got. And if you need support during this time, certainly call me. Book a session on my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and connect with me, book online there, and just, pick a session, astrology, to talk about all of this. Where is it happening for you? And also, my Reiki is very helpful to clear out the obstacles to joy, right? And so my 5D Reiki. And if you need greater, longer support as we move through the changes the outer planets are bringing us, well, then definitely sign up for expansion mentoring with me, and we can work with all my tools in my toolbox and get you through to the next side of these aspects, which are going to change signs early next year. Remember, we're all going and gearing up for another new passage in our lives. So if you need support to create your new life, that's what I'm here for. So reach out to me. My email is info@thegoldenastrologer.com. My email is also deb@debmcbride.com. I'm on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about this week, so I'll probably be more present there than I have been. But definitely take a look at your chart if you know it. Call me if you need help, and we will move through these things together. And I'm sure I will have stories for you next week when we gather again, and it is the day of the eclipse when I record my next podcast. Okay? Much love and gratitude for everyone, and thank you for listening, and I will see you on the internet. Have a beautiful week and a beautiful eclipse.